for me, it's one of my favorite scores. I mean, all around rock and legit. It's just gorgeous. Some of the music just sounds so filmic in the way it's written.
It's very, the score is very cinematic. And the other thing I was going to say is that it's been wonderful, again, how everything just keeps shining on this production, everything coming together. When we got the scores from London, they don't have a lot of cueing in it, so I got instantly online and started trying to find the original orchestrator. I got in touch with his agent. She got in touch with Benny Anderson and Anders Elias, who originally orchestrated the score, and they were able to locate a full score for me, and have been so generous and helpful. I mean, both composers and the orchestrator, and we're going, it's amazing.
A portion of the proceeds from the night's performance is going to Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS. And myself, when I lived in New York working as an actor, I really enjoyed going to see the fundraisers that they would put on. Actors Fund normally produced a lot of those Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS shows. And when I moved to LA, I realized that there was a big drop in charity work for the theater community. I haven't seen a lot of it around.
Our original director on this was Jim Alexander, who passed away in May. And the two of us were just adamant about continuing his vision and taking it forward. And it's just, everything has just fallen into place so amazing.
Absolutely.
It's just been remarkable.
This was his dream, and he actually had approached me to co-produce with him and actually be in the show. And when he passed, I just decided, I said, you know what, either we can let this vision and dream fall apart, or we can forge forward and make something beautiful out of something so tragic. And actually the day he passed, I went to the theater and I booked it.
The best way to keep him alive was to keep the dream alive. Brian had come into the picture. Our musical director for Song and Dance was Dan Redfeld. Dan Redfeld brought Brian to come and see the show. Brian saw that production and he and Jim just hit it off immediately. And we went out to dinner that night at Little Tony's Pizza, and we all had dinner, and it all just started to evolve. And Brian, the day of the incident, like I like to refer to it, I called him and told him what had happened. And a couple of days later, he called me back and he said, "We're doing this anyway." And I kind of went, okay, good for you. There's no way. And he and Dan both talked me into it, about staying with the project and keeping it going. And it happened. It was awesome. It really was. I went in for the tour. I was 19 years old. I'd moved to New York. I had $600 in my pocket. And I got my equity card in 3 weeks. And I did Candide at the Alliance in Atlanta, Georgia. While I was there, I met a couple of people. And one of them being Jay Binder, a casting director, who flew me in for Jerome Robbins' Broadway. And man, I was just sure I was gonna get Jerome Robbins' Broadway. I was gonna get it. They told me, I ran into the production company, the production staff on the street. They told me I got it. Lo and behold, I didn't get it. So through this great guy, this casting director, I got an agent. So the agent calls and he says, okay, you're going in for the tour of Into the Woods. I'm like, all right. So they coach me, we do all this stuff. I walk into the room and there's Steve Sondheim, James Pine, Paul Gemignani, all of these, you know, like, oh, angels sing when they walk in the room, right? And they're like, can you scream? And so I screamed as Rapunzel. Can you do Little Red Riding Hood? So I did that. Can you sing Cinderella? And the next thing I know, I was delivering singing telegrams. I had strep throat. I was 3 weeks late on my rent. This was about, wow, I'd say 4 or 5 days later. I was so sick, and my phone rang, and they said, you're going to Broadway. They bypassed the tour altogether, and they put me in the Broadway company. And it was everything Broadway should be. It was amazing and terrific and precise and demanding, and I've just lived and breathed it.
You know, it was interesting because we were Disney's first foray into the Broadway world. We were a pet project of Michael Eisner. I mean, he liked to visit, you know, the show a lot, and so when he brought it into his backyard, Los Angeles, he wanted all of us to be there. So they brought Terrence Mann and Burke Moses, Beth Fowler, Gary Beach, Tom Bosley, and myself. And then the rest of the cast were LA-based actors, but we did get to come out here, and it was great because this is where I'm from. So, you know, as much fun as I had on Broadway with Beauty and the Beast, my best friends never got to see it. So finally, you know, my folks got to see it out here. This is more of a Disney town. You know, Disney was stepping on a few toes with Beauty and the Beast because I think other producers wanted them to produce with them as opposed to produce on their own. And of course now Disney is a totally accepted, loved, beloved entity on Broadway, but Beauty and the Beast was a little tricky. And so, so the reception was mixed, definitely. In Los Angeles, the reception was a big old party. I've actually done 4 animated features for Disney, but my first one was Hercules, and it was great. You know, people thought I was a shoo-in because I was doing Beauty and the Beast, but the truth is they wouldn't even let me audition for Hercules because the character was very racy, very sexy. She's a bad girl. I mean, she's working for the bad side, and I was playing Belle at the time, and they wouldn't let me audition, and finally, just to shut me up because I was begging, they let me go in. What they didn't realize is that I had read on the breakdown that they had likened the character of Meg to Barbara Stanwyck in The Lady Eve. Well, I am a nut for all those old movies. I love Betty Davis, love Joan Crawford, love Lauren Bacall, love all these. So, so I was pretty okay at mimicking that kind of cadence, that kind of, you know, femme fatale kind of thing. And since I didn't have to look like a femme fatale, I only had to sound like a femme fatale, I had a better shot at it, and I got the job. Kevin Early and I starred in Millie together the last 6 months of the run in New York, and he was very dashing in Thoroughly Modern Millie. And he's decidedly less likable in this because he plays my cheating Russian husband. But I like him anyway.
Very innovative. It was the first musical ever written for a deaf and hearing audience that was specifically written and commissioned by Deaf West to be portrayed for both hearing audiences and deaf audiences, and it was an amazing experience. I wouldn't trade it for the world. It was one of those auditions I went into, and they were like, "Why are you here? There's no real leading roles for you." And I was like, I would give my left arm to be part of this project in any capacity. And there was it was very collaborative. The song that I sang, "Still Small Hours in the Morning," was actually cut in an earlier version. And when I heard it on the demo, because they gave us the demos kind of early on, I heard it on the demo reel, and I said, somebody has to sing this song in the second act. It's a great, you know, because the second act was ballad heavy. And I said, this is a really fun song. I said, I don't care if I sing it. I just think it needs to be sung. And they ended up putting it in, which was really nice. I mean, they took a lot of input from everybody. Jeff Calhoun, who directed, and Coy Middlebrook. I love this show. The first time I worked on it or saw it was at the Marriott Lincolnshire Theatre, and they were one of the first theaters to do it after Broadway had done it. And my mom was the artistic director there, so I was really working I was building props for it, actually. I was building some chess pieces on some poles, and David Bell had directed that production. And again, it was one of the other incarnations of chess. I think there's like 4 or 5 different incarnations, not to mention how many directors have, you know, put their little stamp on it. I got a call from Brian, you know, one day, just to ask me if I would be involved, and of course, to play the Russian is, you know, you cut off your left arm to do a role like that, especially even if it's just for one night. But even if it was, you know, if it was on its own, that'd be great. But I said yes, even more so because it was to benefit Broadway Cares.
Hairspray came about. I was doing Rocky Horror, and I was in the ensemble of that, and Jerry Mitchell asked me to do a reading of Hairspray to be in the ensemble of that. We went into production, I was in the ensemble, and then James Carpinella, who was playing Link, left after 2 weeks for a movie, so I got bumped up, and yeah, and like the rest is history. Actually, Footloose was choreographed by AC, so he kind of wanted me to come into this, and also the Performing Arts High School I went to, Susan Egan went to about, I think, 10 years before I did, and so she really wanted me on board with this, and then yeah, so it kind of just fell into place that way.
I was involved with the benefit that Brian had that was somewhat of a smaller scale, to say the least, and it was one of the first efforts for Broadway Cares out here, and BCFA was very happy that he wanted to take it on. What he's done this year is beyond anyone's expectations. I was also very involved with BCFA in New York as a cast member, and headed the committee one year for the fundraising for Annie Get Your Gun. So, you know, it's I think charity starts at home, and when you're in a Broadway show, what better thing to do than this? So Brian asked me if I'd like to be involved this year, and he thought of me for the role of Walter, and I didn't hesitate. I knew Anthem, I knew Bangkok, and I never knew the number. And the whole, beside those numbers, I never knew the show. I really like it. I mean, it's like a lot of shows, sometimes you can be critical of some areas of it, but the music is phenomenal, and I like the double entendre of chess. Playing the character of Walter, the true chess match is between the KGB and the CIA, and we move our people around, our chess pieces around, and that affects the lives of everybody. And this is nothing new. We can talk about the world situation today, but this goes back, millennia. This has always been the main chess match. However, it's all about the chess match that you'll see on stage, but the real chess match is the geopolitics.
It's crazy because, I spent about 6 years with a band called Dakota Moon on Elektra Records. And, we got a couple gold records from that band. And I had not done theater for a while at this point. And I decided to do We Will Rock You in Las Vegas. And when I was doing that show, I kind of figured it'd be a good way to go back in the theater. And from doing that, Brian May, he's a lead guitar player in Queen, suggested that I audition for Rockstar in Excess. And so I did it. So it's weird that I went back to theater to get onto a rock and roll show. No, I think it would have been great. I mean, to me, I just think, I don't know, I think the caliber of the performers could have been better. I was excited because I know that in theater, I think it's some of the strongest talent you can find anywhere because of the fact that you have to do the singing and dancing and acting, and there's no faking it usually. I was so excited about this show coming on and showing the world what amazing, amazing performers are like. And I just didn't think they hit it. To me, the combination of the two is great because you get to have this amazing melody structure, like a lot of musicals will have, and then you get to have the rawness and the edge and abandon of rock and roll. And for me personally, it kind of combines the two of the things that are so important to me. So I'm like a kid in a candy store when I'm in a rock musical, and I love challenging myself to make a rock musical feel as rocky as it should feel in my mind.